If you look at America right now, you will see two completely different countries existing at the exact same time. The first one looks like a golden age. The stock market is breaking record after record. Unemployment numbers look low, and the official GDP is growing. But if you take a closer look, you'll see a second version of the same country. This version looks like the quiet buildup to every major financial crisis in history, where the average person is struggling to keep up with the cost of living. So, which version is the real one? The truth is, the global economy isn't thriving, but it's also not collapsing just yet. It is currently being held up by 6 giant pillars. But there is a catch. Cracks are starting to run up the side of every single one of them. Today, on Wealth Minter, we are going to unpack these 6 supports together. By the end of this audio, you will understand the economic reality better than 95% of people. And more importantly, you'll know how to protect yourself from whatever comes next. Let's start with the first pillar, the AI revolution and the weight of 4 giants. Imagine your country had just one massive company, and that company decided to spend so much money this year on a single project that, without their spending, the entire nation would instantly fall into a recession. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But that is essentially what is happening right now, spread across just 4 companies: Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet, and Meta. These 4 names alone are pouring somewhere between $650 and $750 billion into what is called capital expenditure. This means they are spending historic amounts of cash on long-term infrastructure to build the future of artificial intelligence. To put that into perspective, this spending is up nearly 77% from previous years. It is more than the entire defense budgets of the UK, France, and Germany combined. On one hand, this technological leap is incredibly exciting, but there is a dark side. Economic data shows that a massive chunk of recent US GDP growth came entirely from this AI capital expenditure. If you strip the spending of these 4 companies out of the equation, the rest of the economy is basically flat. This means the headline numbers politicians wave around look great because of just one industry. There is a double problem here. All this spending is based on the assumption that AI will eventually generate enough real profit to justify it. Right now, that revenue is nowhere close. This brings us to our second pillar, the wealth effect and the top 10%. Businesses can only buy so many microchips and servers. Eventually, real people need to walk into shops, swipe their cards, and buy things, or the economy stalls. So, who is actually doing the spending outside of tech? The data is quite shocking. Think of the economy as one giant restaurant with millions of potential customers. You might think the bill is evenly shared, but you'd be wrong. According to recent data from the Federal Reserve, the top 10% of households are now responsible for nearly 50% of all consumer spending. This is one of the highest concentrations ever recorded. This happens because of what economists call the wealth effect. When people watch their stock portfolios go up or see their houses gain value on paper, they naturally feel richer, even if they haven't sold anything or earned an extra dollar in cash. That feeling makes them loosen their wallets. Because consumer spending makes up about 70% of total GDP, the entire economy is now heavily reliant on the top 10% feeling rich. But the wealth effect works both ways. If the stock market faces a standard correction, trillions of dollars in paper wealth will vanish overnight. The rich will instantly cut back on luxury spending, and the second pillar will crack. And right beneath this surface lies our third pillar, the invisible mountain of credit card debt. While the top 10% are spending out of asset gains, what about the other 90%? Let's look at an average person. Let's call him Jack. Jack is 32, works hard, and takes home a decent monthly paycheck. A few years ago, that paycheck was enough to get by comfortably. Today, it isn't. His groceries, insurance, utilities, and rent have all gone up significantly. So what does Jack do? He does what millions of people are doing. He puts the shortfall on a credit card. Credit card balances have recently hit an all-time high, hovering around $1.3 trillion. Buy now, pay later apps have turned into a massive multi-billion-dollar industry. This debt isn't being used for fancy vacations. It's being used for everyday essentials like fuel, food, and medicine. But you cannot outrun inflation with a credit card forever. Eventually, you hit a limit, and the interest rates catch up. We are already seeing the first signs of this pillar crumbling. As credit card delinquencies and missed payments hit multi-year highs, the average consumer is simply running out of room. This leads us to the fourth pillar, government deficit spending. Since businesses are focused on AI, the rich are spending on paper wealth, and the middle class is relying on credit. How is the GDP still showing growth? The answer is the government itself. The federal government regularly spends about $2 trillion more than it collects in taxes every single year. This borrowed money flows directly into the economy through contracts, infrastructure projects, and public funding. If you remove this artificial stimulus, the economy shrinks instantly. The cost of keeping this pillar standing is terrifying. The annual interest on the national debt has crossed the $1 trillion mark. The government is spending billions of dollars every single day just to pay interest on its existing debt. It is a financial trap where raising taxes crushes growth, but cutting spending causes a political crisis. Which brings us to the fifth pillar, the dominance of the reserve currency. How can a nation carry trillions in debt without its currency collapsing? Because it holds a financial superpower, the weapon of the global reserve currency. Almost all international trade, whether it's oil, wheat, or microchips, is priced and settled in dollars. This creates a global demand for the currency, allowing it to borrow at a scale that would bankrupt any other nation on Earth. Economists call this the exorbitant privilege. But even this superpower is showing signs of strain. Over the past decade, the heavy use of financial sanctions has made many nations nervous. Countries like the BRICS nations are actively setting up alternative payment networks. Central banks around the world have been buying gold at historic rates, diversifying away from a currency they no longer fully trust. Trust takes decades to build, but it can be chipped away much faster than people realize. Finally, we have the sixth pillar, the psychological safety net. With all these structural strains, why aren't investors panicking? The answer lies in psychology. For decades, Wall Street has relied on the concept of the Fed put, the firm belief that if the markets drop severely enough, the central bank and the government will step in to print money, cut rates, and rescue the system. Investors no longer believe in permanent risk because they assume the government will always throw out a safety net. This belief is the psychological glue holding the entire system together. But a political safety net works well for a financial panic. What it cannot fix is a real-world supply shock or geopolitical crisis. When global tensions rise, oil prices spike, and inflation threatens to return. All six pillars are tested at the exact same time. The system hasn't broken yet because the supports are still flexing under the pressure. But the longer they are strained, the larger the eventual adjustment will be. Here at Wealth Mentor, our goal is never to spread fear, but to provide clarity. When you understand the underlying mechanics of the global economy, you can make smarter choices with your own money. In times of uncertainty, the best strategy is always to build your own personal financial pillars. First, minimize high-interest consumer debt. Second, maintain a solid emergency fund covering at least 3 to 6 months of expenses. Third, diversify your assets so you aren't entirely reliant on a single market or currency. And finally, invest in your own skills and knowledge, because that is an asset no economic downer can take away from you. Which of these six pillars do you think is under the most pressure right now? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found value in this deep dive, please hit the like button and subscribe to Wealth Mentor to stay ahead of the curve. Thank you for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.